The body cam of this story is rolling on Vince Masuka's face, the moment the Bay Harbor butcher stops being a monster in the ocean and starts looking like a coworker in a lab coat. The claim is simple. Masuka always suspected Dexter, and I will prove it with 7 receipts from across the series, starting with a green smear on a rock that only one man in Miami could read. This is commentary and critique for education and entertainment. Major spoilers ahead. Before we plate the evidence, do me a favor. Drop one episode in the comments where you think Masuka got the closest to Dexter's secret, and add a one-line theory for what tipped him off. I am going to test your picks against what the camera shows, beat by beat. We are operating across Dexter, Season 1 through Season 8. The suspect board has 2 faces, not one. Dexter, the department miracle who conjures answers out of thin air. Masuka, the class clown with weapon-grade observation skills and an appetite for truth that he hides behind bad jokes. Watch how the show introduces Masuka's lens. He is all smirk and swagger at the tape line, but his hands move like a metronome over evidence. He is comedic pressure release for everyone else at Miami Metro, and a pressure cooker for patterns. That is the setup the series quietly builds for 2 full seasons. Here is our first hard receipt, and it is the fulcrum. Season 2, Episode 4. See-through Masuka finds algae on the rocks used to weigh the butcher's bags. He does not just say algae. He correlates species and environment, narrowing the marina where the killer's boat would stage. It is the forensics equivalent of finding a footer trail on a hacked page. That algae analysis is a non-negotiable sign of how deeply and how systematically he looks. Curiosity Loop 1. If Masuka can triangulate a killer's boat from algae residue, what would he see when a colleague keeps arriving first to truths the lab has not yet confirmed? Sit with that. We will pay it off when LaGuerta pulls a slide from a church. While that algae is quietly indicting the marina, Dexter is quietly solving too much. He guesses right before the lab can test. He arrives at crime scene narratives faster than detectives who live in witness interviews. Masuka watches this as the man who feeds those detectives their science. Pattern interrupt. If that is true, then why does Masuka never pull Dexter aside? Because he is building a working model, not a confrontation. He notices files, waits for a lab event he can measure against an out-in-the-wild anomaly. The show gives him one. Season 6, Episode 12, The Doomsday Church, LaGuerta finds a single blood slide at the scene. Season 7, Episode 1, Are You? She quietly takes the slide to the lab and checks it against the Bay Harbor butcher profile. We do not need a speech from Masuka here. The series frames the lab as the memory palace of the old case, and he is the librarian who remembers the checkout rules. Season 7, Episode 5, Swim Deep Masuka reveals that LaGuerta sent the church slide out for testing outside the normal chain. The line is small. The implication is heavy. He understands that the slide is the butcher's signature, that its existence violates the closed case, and that his boss is circling someone inside the building. He knows enough to clock the secrecy. Curiosity Loop 2. If Masuka clocks the secrecy around the slide, does he ever test the man who should be the most threatened by that slide? We will answer with a Thanksgiving whisper and a Season 5 fallout. Run the clock back. Season 4, Episode 9, Hungry Man. The camera catches Masuka on Dexter's back patio at Thanksgiving, eyes up at the sliding door, witnessing Rita and Elliot kiss. It is a domestic tell, but for us it is about the observer, not the kiss. Masuka is the one person that day who sees through Dexter's perfect suburban cover and says nothing. He stores truth when it will only cause noise. Season 5, Episode 1, My Bad. The show returns us to Elliot's house. Quinn is fishing, neighbors are whispering, and grief has a spotlight. The kiss Masuka witnessed becomes a piece of fallout. The receipt is not that Masuka confesses. The receipt is that he did not. He kept that powder dry until the narrative required it, because he knows the difference between evidence and fuel. Pattern interrupt. If that is true, then Masuka's jokes are not camouflage for ignorance, they are containment for knowledge. He says the unsayable only when it moves an outcome, the same way he drops the algae when it moves the map. This is how the show hides his seriousness in plain sight. Let us tighten the forensic screws. Season 2, Episode 4, Algae points the task force toward a marina. Season 7, Episode 5, Slide testing signals a living butcher. Those are bookends. In between, pay attention to how often Dexter's hunches line up perfectly with what the lab will later confirm. No other character is positioned to notice that alignment more cleanly than Masuka, because he is the one running the confirmation. Curiosity Loop 3. Could Masuka link Dexter's case-solving edge to the butcher's surgical pattern without seeing the killer work? Hold that thought. We need one more lab bench receipt before we test the theory head-on. Season 7, Episode 12, Surprise, Motherf. During LaGuerta's endgame, Masuka reports a lab result that the blood on a supposedly fresh shirt is old case evidence, an anomaly that undermines a clean narrative. He is not grandstanding, he is doing what he always does, flagging the specific thing inside the data that does not fit the declared story. And that habit is exactly what would make Dexter's near omniscience look like noise to him long before it looked like heroism. Pattern interrupt. If that is true, then Masuka's silence is not incompetence or fear. It is discipline. He does not accuse people, he tests stories. And Dexter's story is the one story at Miami Metro that only works if no one tests it. Now, let me step into the position Masuka occupies, because this is where the psychology matters. You are the lab's truth engine. You see the worst human beings in the city post-impact, and you make it make sense. You also see the only colleague who never looks rattled, not once. Your job is to measure splatter geometry and fluid dynamics, but you are measuring demeanor too. Curiosity Loop 4. Why does Masuka keep the boundary with Dexter right where he does? Because he understands two parallel risks. One, the practical. Confronting the wrong person with the right suspicion can get you fired or dead. Two, the systemic. If the butcher sits inside the building wearing a badge and a smile, ripping that mask off detonates the past. Every case he touched becomes radioactive, evidence becomes appeal fodder, murderers walk. Season 2, Episode 4 already taught us something. Masuka never says out loud, he tracks impact, not intent. He follows the physical truth wherever it leads. The algae told him to stop thinking about faces and start thinking about water. The slide told him to stop believing in closed cases and start believing in signatures. Pattern interrupt. If that is true, then what does he do with Dexter's calm? He does the same thing he does with every other pattern. He assigns it to the ledger and waits for an external trigger to either confirm or falsify it. He is not a detective. He is a scientist. He does not move on instinct. He moves on replicated anomalies. That brings us back to the green smear that started this. The algae did not reveal a person, it revealed a place. And by revealing a place, it narrowed the set of people who could plausibly be the man behind the butcher's knife. A lab rat with a boat. A colleague who lives at the crime scene edge but never trips over it. A man who solves the lab's questions right before the lab asks them. Masuka does not need to say that out loud to understand what it implies. Curiosity Loop Payoff 1. You asked earlier if Masuka ever tests Dexter directly. He does, but the test looks like banter. Those quick, sideways comments about Dexter's blood-driven hobbies are not throwaway gags. They are ping tests. The series uses humor as a mask, and Masuka uses it as sonar. He throws a joke to see what bounces back. Discomfort, deflection, or the still water of a man who thinks he is untouchable. Watch the Thanksgiving table again. The kitchen lights are warm. The dining room chatter is high. Elliot leans in. Rita leans in. Masuka turns away from the glass like he has brushed a live wire. He knows when truth burns. He also knows when telling it will burn the wrong person. He files the moment under leverage on reality, not leverage on Dexter. That is who he is. Curiosity Loop Payoff 2. When LaGuerta moves the slide into the light, Masuka's reaction is procedural, not personal. He notes the outside lab, he notes the break in the chain. He notes the butcher's signature. He does not say Dexter. He says what the evidence says, the butcher is not done, and someone in this building knows it. Here is the escalation. Stack the receipts in order. Season 2, Episode 4, Algae narrows a marina. Season 4, Episode 9, Masuka witnesses a crack in Dexter's domestic mask. Season 5, Episode 1, the fallout confirms how much he can keep to himself. Season 6, Episode 12, and Season 7, Episode 1, a new slide resurrects the Butcher's signature. Season 7, Episode 5, Masuka clocks LaGuerta's secret test. Season 7, Episode 12, the lab itself catches an evidence anomaly that sabotages a neat frame. Pattern interrupt. If that is true, then the simplest explanation is brutal. The man most qualified to see Dexter's pattern saw enough of it early enough to suspect the truth. He just never had one clean, admissible piece to take him from suspicion to accusation without destroying everything he swore to support. Let me humanize this for 60 seconds, because people like Masuka do not get grace on screen. He is lonely, he is brilliant, he is rude, only because he is terrified of the day when he is not enough. And in the one place where he is more than enough, the lab, he has to pretend to be less so no one thinks he wants their spotlight. That is the secret engine of his character. Curiosity Loop 5. What breaks a man like that? Evidence that cannot be said without breaking the house that feeds him. He will keep making jokes until the day his tongue cannot save him. And then he will do what scientists do. He will step closer to the flame and keep measuring. Ethics note before we roll into the final run. None of this glamorizes what Dexter does. Bodies are not puzzles. They are people. The point of laying receipts on the table is not to celebrate a killer's craft, but to honor the logic and psychology of the colleagues who had to work beside that craft without letting it deform their own. We will test the strongest counter theory next, that Masuka never suspected anything at all, that he was exactly what he looked like, and that we are reading brains into a man who only traded brains for punchlines. I will put that argument on the bench, and then I will use the receipts you saw to push back. Masuka as oblivious is the easy story. He is the laugh track, not the lie detector. He does not do suspects, he does splatter angles. He is too busy objectifying coworkers to notice that the quiet guy in the next cubicle is dismantling Miami's monsters at night. That is the counter theory. The problem with that story is the algae. Season 2, Episode 4, see-through you do not get from guy who cracks jokes to guy who traces a marina from a residue profile without a mind that notices micro patterns and asks macro questions. The algae is not just a clue in the Butcher case, it is a Rosetta Stone for how Masuka thinks and how early he was willing to go wider and deeper than the script required. Curiosity Loop 6. If he is that observant, would he really ignore Dexter's composure? Watch Dexter in the worst rooms. He is smooth when innocence would shake. He is serene when other men would show a human seam. The lab camera does not linger on Masuka's face in those moments, but the story logic says he is there, watching, filing, comparing the way he compares blood drop velocity against impact distance. Pattern interrupt. If that is true, then Masuka starts building a layered hypothesis. Layer 1. My colleague is unshakable in rooms that shake everyone. Layer 2. My colleague's guesses preempt my tests more often than chance allows. Layer 3. The Butcher's signature reappears, and our boss keeps it outside the chain. Layer 4. A shirt shows old blood where new blood was supposed to be. The layers do not force a name, they force a direction. We are back at the church. Season 6, Episode 12, and Season 7, Episode 1, the slide exists. Season 7, Episode 5, Masuka notes LaGuerta's outside lab. This tells you two things about him. He stays plugged into the meta of evidence, not just the micro, and he refuses to contaminate that meta with gossip. He says, the minimum, that is not distance. That is professional hygiene. Curiosity Loop 7, what about the surgical precision angle people love to throw at the Butcher? Would Masuka map that onto Dexter's meticulousness around blood? He would not conflate aesthetic with method, but he would notice when method rhymes. Dexter's lab world is tidy to the thread. His scene reconstructions are mathematical. His solutions often read like reconstructions in reverse. That rhyme is not proof. It is exactly the kind of that a scientist stores for the day a final variable drops. Here is a short, grim micro vignette. Late lab night. Everyone has gone home. The hum of the refrigeration units is the only thing that loops. Masuka compares microscopic particulates, grinds through a stack of slides, and finds one anomalous result that does not match the chain on the log. He fixes the paperwork, he does not break the room. That is the man we are talking about. Pattern interrupt. If that is true, then silence is not complicity, it is care. He is protecting the integrity of a system that collapses if he yells fire without a hydrant and a hose. He is also protecting himself. Because this is not a game, the Butcher's Code does not have a clause for colleague who guessed correctly. Let us do the frame by frame on Masuka's proximity to Dexter's mask. Season 4, Episode 9. He sees the kiss at Thanksgiving, a crack in the Morgan family tableau. He tucks it away. He does not dangle it. That is not cowardice. It is calibration. He knows Dexter does not need more chaos to solve. He also knows chaos is where Dexter inexplicably thrives. Season 5, Episode 1. That household becomes a crime scene address. Quinn fishes. The neighbors speculate. Masuka does not volunteer to be center stage. He avoids the easy social currency of, I knew something. That restraint is the same restraint he uses at the lab bench. He will not create meaning just to have meaning. He will test meaning when meaning arrives. Curiosity Loop 8. Why does the show give Masuka those 2 domestic receipts if all it wants from him is punchlines? Because it is building a quiet parallel. Masuka sees the personal and the procedural with the same eyes. He can measure truth in a living room as sharply as he can measure truth in a petri dish. The camera trusts him with both. Season 7, Episode 12, Surprise, We are at the end game. LaGuerta is pushing a frame. The lab disrupts a neat story with a messy finding. Old blood, wrong provenance. The department's sanity hangs on the kind of detail that only 1 or 2 people in the building can read under fluorescent light. Masuka is one of them. It is not a twist, it is a thesis statement about his function. Now, let me answer the emotional counter theory. Maybe Masuka did not want the truth. Maybe he needed Dexter to be a hero because the job needs heroes. That is partially right. The job needs endurance more than heroes, and Masuka embodies endurance. He survives by turning horror into gallows humor and surprise into routine. He can carry the weight of suspicion without trying to lift it alone. Ethics line, now that we are in the last act. We are not romanticizing Dexter's kills by suggesting Masuka saw through the fog. We are honoring the craft, logic, and psychology of a scientist who did his job so well that he could see a darkness he was not empowered to prosecute. The people on those slabs were not props. They were victims. Masuka's evidence work is part of what gave them a voice. Curiosity Loop 9. If Masuka had confronted Dexter, what would have happened? The code would have come first, or the badge would have come off, or the building would have burned down around them both. The series never gives us that showdown because it understands Masuka's truth. He does not set fires. He prevents false alarms. Let us land this with the receipts aligned in one clean chain of custody. Season 2, Episode 4, Algae turns a city into a map. Season 4, Episode 9, A Kiss turns a suburb into a mask. Season 5, Episode 1, Fallout turns gossip into gravity. Season 6, Episode 12, and Season 7, Episode 1, A Slide turns a closed file into an open wound. Season 7, Episode 5, The Outside Lab turns a suspicion into a pattern. Season 7, Episode 12, Old Blood turns a frame into a fracture. None of these scenes require Masuka to point at Dexter. All of them require him to notice the only things that could point anyone at the Butcher's present tense. Pattern interrupt, last one. If that is true, then the headline is not that Masuka missed Dexter, it is that Masuka measured Dexter. He measured him the only way a scientist can measure a colleague without becoming a cop or a corpse. He followed the evidence, guarded the evidence, and let the evidence say what he could not. Here is the verdict, and it echoes our hook. Masuka always suspected Dexter because forensics do not lie, and Masuka is forensics with a pulse. The algae did not give him a name, but it gave him a method. The slide did not give him a confession, but it gave him a signature. The old blood did not give him safety, but it gave him certainty. Put those three together, and the only person in Miami who could have missed Dexter is the one person who never reads the lab book. Vince Masuka reads it cover to cover. If this breakdown made you reframe one Masuka moment, type I saw the receipts if you will rewatch that scene. And if you want more evidence-first autopsies of your favorite shows, you know what to do. Masuka was never just comic relief. He was the quiet scientist who saw a monster at the waterline and decided to wait for the tide to tell the truth. Subscribe to Scene Autopsy, where we solve television mysteries with receipts